Good morning, USA. Welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. We've got an interesting conundrum to tickle out of its knots today. We've got a previous argument going, a line of reasoning going that it's class warfare. That we've got the poor versus the middle and the poor versus the rich. We've got a lot of regular working class people who've been taught to blame each other, and then we've got the rich fat cats on the top encouraging us to blame each other. So I've said in the past that if we can get the working class people, whatever color shirts they're wearing, to unite and to agree with each other, then we can turn our ire upward. We can look up and we can see where the real problem is. I've also talked about the urban and suburban elitists who would rather vote for someone who helps them maintain their status quo. So it's a little more complicated though than just purely class warfare, because what would happen if we did figure out how to unite people and to get all of the working class people, Republicans and Democrats, and I was representing the Republican working class with truck drivers. I'm saying they're a good representation of the Republican working class, and teachers are a good representation of the Democrat working class. College professors are part of the elitist problem, typically. Not always. There are some radical and populist professors. But what we have here in the working class is no unity. But if we had unity, we would still have trouble. I think I've been fooling myself a little bit, thinking that if we could just get all the truckers and teachers together, we'd win. What I want to point out today is that even if we had unity among the working class, we'd still be facing the plutocrats. They'd have a much more difficult job holding us all down if we were united, but they still have immense power, and they still have a machine in place. That what would happen is, since we know that those of us on the radical left, since we know that they would rather have Trump than Bernie, what would happen if we actually got Bernie into the general election is that they would start funding, and it's easy for them to fund, say, TV commercials or other ways of funding Bernie's opposition, because they will. They'll try to get Trump elected if it's clear that Bernie is the Democratic candidate. What that would look like is it would be very sneaky and underhanded. What you'd see is television commercials trying to make us afraid of the word socialism. That would be the main thrust of their trying to defeat Bernie. Because our populace is not very well educated about politics, particularly about socialism and communism and capitalism, the general population would be ripe for the plucking. It would be very easy to scare them into voting for Donald Trump over Bernie Sanders. So I may be thinking too far ahead, because it's almost impossible, even uniting the workers, to think that they would even let Bernie in. So I in turn focus on getting all of the working people united versus how to defeat David Brock, John Cowan, other wealthy think tank people on the top. If you look at, let's start with this article since I have it up here. This is by Paul Street. Paul Street is one of the most brilliant voices on the left. Chris Hedges is another. When you hear them speak, when you read their words, when you watch them, it's informative to watch Chris Hedges speak. I have different insights than just reading him. He's so articulate. Noam Chomsky is another one. You almost have to hear him speak his words of wisdom to fully benefit from the impact. Let me dive into this article. You may have to go back and read it for better context, but I'm going to dive into it because it's thick, it's dense, and I just want to give you a taste of it. Yes, Virginia, the Democrats have an authenticity problem. You betcha. The late left Princeton political scientist Sheldon Wallen memorably labeled the Democrats as, get this, the inauthentic opposition 12 years ago. And I've explained in other episodes how the Democratic Party is controlled opposition, and I've spent a lot of time explaining what controlled opposition is. Wallen called it, a nominal Democrat was elected president along with Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress in 2008. He's referring to Barack Obama. What followed, as under his Democratic presidential predecessor Bill Clinton, was the standard elite neoliberal manipulation of campaign populism and identity politics. I've talked about identity politics recently, in service to the reigning big money bankrollers and their global empire. His way of words, Paul Street. If you haven't bumped into Paul Street, you really need to read more of him. Wall Street's control of Washington and the related imperial agenda of the Pentagon system were advanced more effectively by the nation's first black president than they could have been by stiff and wealthy white Republicans like John McCain or Mitt Romney. The reigning U.S. system of corporate and imperial inverted totalitarianism, ooh, did I botch that? Inverted totalitarianism, that was Wallen's expression, was given a deadly fake democratic rebranding. The underlying drift rightwards sharpened, fed by a widespread and easily Republican exploited sense of popular abandonment and betrayal, we've talked about that, as the hypocritical and inauthentic dollar Democrats depressed and demobilized their own purported popular base. He goes on to say Hillary did nothing to correct that problem, and then Trump's faux populism in that setting was deadly. Hillary called Trump supporters a basket of racist and sexist deplorables in a sneering comment, one that accurately reflected her aristocratic, progressive neoliberal worldview to rich Manhattan campaign donors. She was talking to Manhattan campaign donors. When she speaks to Goldman Sachs people, she has another face that she shows them. And the machine keeps on rolling. The Democrats would have won the 2016 election and overcome some of their authenticity problem by running Bernie Sanders, the one guy that didn't run to Wall Street for money, quoting Hirsch. In something of a tantalizing anomaly for Professor Stanley's rule, Sanders raised huge sums but did so from working and middle-class small donors, and didn't represent the interests of large donors or pretend that the best interests of the multinational corporations were also the common interest. So with Sanders, we go right back to class warfare. Now, that brings me to talk about Tom Perez. You can watch him. He's sitting right next to where Bernie is standing in this speech. And what I'd like you to think about is when Perez claps and when he doesn't clap. When he doesn't clap, it's really obvious that it's because his donors wouldn't want him to clap in those moments. He claps where he feels that his donors would allow it and doesn't clap where they wouldn't. And other people, if you notice on the dais here, have the same thought, the same values as Perez. Just see, you can watch who's clapping and when, and you'll know a lot. I'm going to skip ahead here.
Bible, the burden that we face and that this party faces is a heavy one, and we cannot afford to fail. And let me be as clear as I can be. In my view, We will only be successful if we are capable of rallying an unprecedented grassroots uprising that sweeps Trump and all that he represents out of office.
You can see the decision there he made. Oh, he said sweep Trump out of office. Okay, I better clap there. Let's keep going.
And this is where we are today. Our healthcare system is designed to make $100 billion in profits for the healthcare industry, while 87 million are uninsured or underinsured. 30,000 a year die. 500,000 Americans go bankrupt. The time is now to pass a
Who is he texting? He's looking at his phone. He's texting people. He sits up straighter. You can see he's really torn here. He doesn't know what to do.
Medicare for all single-payer program.
He doesn't clap.
Our economy creates a handful of Silicon Valley and Wall Street billionaires while paying millions of American workers.
Look at that guy scratching his head over on the side. He's like, oh, can he be saying this in front with me, right in front of everyone?
Starvation, wages. The time is now to address the crisis of income and wealth inequality and tell the 1% that, yes, they will start paying their fair share of taxes.
Well, he clapped at that one, and then they didn't know what to do.
Our energy system enriches fossil fuel executives while their products destroy our planet. The time is now to tell the fossil fuel industry that we will no longer allow them to destroy this planet for their short-term profits. We will transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
Okay, that's okay. All right. Everyone else saw Tom clap, so then they started to clap.
Our younger generation, for the first time in the modern history of this country.
I'll stop. It goes on like that. The most revealing is when he said healthcare for all, and nobody clapped. Nobody on the dais clapped. And that's when you can really see what we're up against. So Paul Street's structure that he's talking about, the Obama, Clinton, and really the centrist Republicans we've had too, have perpetuated this machine for a long time. So even if we get the people going, even if we get the liberal, neoliberal, suburban Democrats on the beat Trump bandwagon, and even if they want to put Bernie in, after Bernie gets in, and again, I may be overthinking and I may be ahead of myself here, but after Bernie gets in, then we've got the bigger machine to fight, and that's when things could really get ugly. But I'd like to give Bernie a shot at it. I'd like to see what happens with his machinery to get the people to vote, because what it would turn out to be, instead of people staying home in droves, particularly poor and poorly educated people staying home in droves, we would get people feeling like they were picketing or rioting even. And instead of rioting, all they have to do is vote. And then we would see where the real power is, and we would see what we're up against as Americans. All right, I'll leave you with that thought. I kind of woke up in a worried state this morning, and I just wanted to share, even if everything I've been working on with Bernie or Bust bears fruit, we're still not out of the woods. So I just wanted to kind of project that ahead. It's still August, I understand, but we may come back to this discussion and say, yeah, that's what ended up happening. Well, I wish you a very good day. Hope everything goes well for you as you're headed back into the hustle and bustle of a new school year.